Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for the first webinar in this four-part series from the Ethical and Societal Impacts of Gen AI Task Force that's part of the ACM Education Advisory Committee. I'm one of the chairs of this committee, and I'm joined by Joyce. You want to introduce yourself real quickly?
Yes, thank you, Janice. Hi, everyone. We are very delighted to have you joining us on this very first webinar, and we look forward to having very good discussions and deliberations. Thank you. Back to you, Janice.
Thank you, Joyce. And so we have three esteemed guests with us today. We're going to start off with Hironao Okahana. He's Vice President and Executive Director of Education Futures Lab. I'm going to drop his bio in the chat and give him the floor. Then we're going to go to Michael Madaiao from Google. And then we are going to go to Aarti Singh from Carnegie Mellon University. Each of them will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. During the time of their talking, please go ahead and use the Q&A function to drop in any questions that come to mind so that we get those questions and to seed our fireside chat at the end. All right. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and pass it off to Hiro. Again, I'm going to put his bio in the chat for you all, and he's going to give a further introduction and talk about the work that he does in this landscape. Thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. So let me just share a little bit on the I'm hoping this is working okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Well, at least it's Wednesday morning for where I'm at. My name is Hiro. I'm at the American Council on Education. In short, it's ACE. It's not ACE. ACE is a hardware store in U.S. context, but we go by ACE. We're a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit, non-government association. We're a member association and also major convener in the higher education sector in the U.S. We have about 1,600 colleges and universities and other higher education adjacent organizations as our members. And we do work around the advocacy and the public policy front. And we also do research and capacity building work for the sector. I work as a Vice President and Executive Director of Education Futures Lab. And in that capacity, I don't do much on the advocacy side, but I do more on this like a research and the capacity building aspect of work. And just kind of like the further context about myself. First I need to tell you that I'm not a technical expert of AI at all. I am a higher education researcher by training. What I focus on is typically around how colleges and universities work, how college leadership works, how colleges and universities as a complex organization interact with within the sector and also beyond. So in that context, the topic of AI has been coming up a lot lately. So I think about AI and the use of AI technology and the interaction of AI with the post-secondary sector, and that side. So what I'm going to cover is very non-technical, but it's more the thoughts around that. Or here are some of the things that college presidents and some other college leaders are thinking about or wondering what are the sort of things that they need to be focusing on. So thanks. So I'll first start by talking a little bit about how the post-secondary institutions, so those are like colleges and universities, are interacting with AI from our vantage point. And we see largely three buckets right now. One other part is research and development. Not all colleges and universities, but we do have a large portion of not large by the number, but the most visible part of our colleges in the post-secondary sector tend to be these research universities. And those universities have people like you all who study about AI, who develop technology, and who think about the application of these technology in day-to-day basis. So, so for that reason, the post-secondary sector, post-secondary institutions as the place that research and development happens, have huge interaction and a huge stake in with the AI technology side of it. So that's kind of like one part, and I think that's the conversation that's probably most mature, like most prominently featured around it. But there are two other parts that are big buckets that the colleges and universities interact with the AI technology. One is, the teaching and the learning. It's already in classroom a lot. ChatGPT and those tools that are empowered by the AI technology is something that students have used. And certainly some of the faculty members are using, and whether they are getting some support in writing their essays or writing their syllabus or looking for the course contents kind of ways. So in those sense that the technology is already in sort of classroom already. And in fact, some of like earlier conversation about what to do with AI in the context of colleges and universities as institution of teaching and learning really revolved around, what to do with the academic integrity question was sort of the prominent around it. The third part is a workforce development piece. As these technology that become more prominent and used in the workplaces, we've been talking a lot about need for reskilling and upskilling for existing workforce, so that people don't left out by these emerging technology. As the nature of jobs started to shift because of the introduction and further advancement of AI technology in many different places, we want to make sure that the people who work and people who are already working in the places can get training. And those are certainly the places where the colleges and universities have, not always in terms of the degree programs, but inclusive of non-degree programs that can be, and that should probably be thinking about, how to make sure that the training opportunity for reskilling, upskilling are going to be available for many people. So that's sort of like an area where we are seeing like sort of three buckets of interaction that we see. Now, as the technology and the sort of conversation about the AI continue to expand it, there are some other areas that we'll probably see more and more interactions that are going to happen in the post-secondary context. Those two areas. One is student support services, and the other part is operations and administration. And I should sort of start by saying that colleges and universities are very labor-intensive organization. A lot of time that we are the one of the largest employment sector in the United States. It takes a lot of people to run colleges and universities and provide core services to students and others around it. And some of those work the talk is that AI technology may be able to that help out or make processes more efficient around it. And I think that's where the expansion into the student support services and operations and administration as the places we are closely looking at. What does that exactly mean? So student support services are things like tutoring and academic advising kind of work. Now, these technology already exist. Some colleges and universities, like places like University of Michigan, have sort of tutoring bot that individual instructor can tailor some of the contents into the specific to the courses that they are teaching. And in some cases, they use the AI-enabled tool for academic advising purposes. And some other areas that could get expanding into it is these tools can use as the early detection for students at risk. Before students are going to be in need for interventions, technology may be able to help staff members or faculty members to flag students who might be in the potentially at risk. And again, those are the areas that says tutoring or academic advising takes a lot of people to do it well. And in some areas, the technology may be able to optimize the processes so that, we'll always need in the individual, the human touch at the end, but we can more strategically deploy these human assets in supporting people so that we can extend the reach of these services. Other area that talks often is in this space of college admissions and the college transfer process. And that's an area that it's very labor intensive right now. And there are a lot of manual work that are involved in reviewing the application materials or reviewing the potential transfer course credit equivalency. And some of these things can be optimized by use of AI-enabled technology. So that's another area that could enhance the efficiency and scale of the student support services that we'll continue to need to provide around it. And then there are more like operation and administrations side of it that goes into it. Like many other places, not just within the higher education space, but there's a sort of like area around that some of the research assistant or administrative assistant work may be substituted with the use of use of AI technology in going forward, and sort of change sort of the nature of the workforce. Now, all these things brings some of the challenges and concerns that college leaders or the sector in general are sort of contemplate around it. And here are some of the things that come to my mind in they're going sort of navigating this landscape right now. I mentioned about the sort of question of academic integrity issues. I think that's sort of like very now kind of topic and thinking about it, and really thinking about what constituted cheating when these technologies are available. And this is not, the good news is this is not necessarily that sort of like a new question. We had a sort of similar way of dealing with this question that when calculator was introduced, broadly. So that, but this is a part of the conversation of like, what do we count as a cheating and a not cheating, and what's the sort of appropriate use in the context of the taking classes, or even for faculty members and others to produce like a course syllabus or course contents around it. But like sorting that one out is one question that we're going to have around it. And then there's like a data privacy and the security issue associated with it. These tools are going to be empowered and continue to be empowered by the data that the institutions can gather through how their students and other individuals are interacting with their institutions and a variety of different platforms associated with it. So there's going to be a question about, like what's the appropriate data points that institutions can capture, and also like what are the considerations for students' privacy, and who owns this data, and who can benefit from these rich data that individual learners are sort of providing to these platforms and the tools that they're going to be interacting with. We have a fair amount of questions and concerns or wondering around the biases and how to make sure that the tools are not inadvertently set us backwards in terms of the inclusivity and equity and justice associated in the colleges and universities context around it. So that's like another part that we get worried about, that the process may become more efficient in the short term, but we want to make sure that the sector worked very hard to make sure that we continue to broaden the participation of all people from different backgrounds to be at the colleges and universities set up. So we don't want to inadvertently dial us back in any way. And then there's an inequitable access to technology issue. The sector is incredibly diverse. In the U.S., the post-secondary sector is. We are talking about the sort of the whole ecosystem that Harvard University of the world and the two-year community colleges in the rural part of the United States coexist. So when we talk about higher education as a whole sector, there are a variety of different institutions with very wide-ranging resources availability to be able to take advantage of technology. And some universities have a large number of researchers or data engineers or others who can quickly adapt with the new technology. Thus, their students will be able to leverage different kind of new technology made available to them. But many other institutions might not have readily available in-house talents or resources to bring in new tools. So, as these technology become more available to colleges and universities, we do not want to have a situation where inadvertently creating sort of haves and not haves among the different types of institutions. So we want to make sure on that part too. And also, colleges and universities being the big employer and the big facilities, we want to be making sure that these technology require a large amount of computing resources and computing power associated with it. So, there's, just as the rest of the sector has to think about it, there is going to be some environmental impact associated with it. So that's another area that, we need to be concerned. And, didn't put on the slide, but, all these kind of challenges and concerns we have right now, what would be the role of federal government or state governments in setting some guardrails and also incentives for us to make sure that the sector moves toward the good direction that can benefit many, as opposed to only benefiting the subset of the our sector and learners. So that's kind of another part that we think a lot about it. But I think that's roughly my time. So I'm gonna back to you, Janice.
Oh, thank you so much, Hiro. So we started off with a broad, high-level overview of what college presidents and the landscape in higher education is thinking about Gen AI. We're going to shift now to industry perspective, and we have Michael Madaiao from Google with us, and he's going to share about his work. He's a senior research scientist, so I'll let him take the floor.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Janice. Really appreciate the introduction. Ian, would you be able to share screen? Looks like I may have some difficulty sharing screen for the slides here.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think that this is a really nice overview from Hiro of some of the current challenges of the introduction of Gen AI into the landscape in higher ed. If you go to the next slide, please, Jan. So as many of you may know, may have seen some recent headlines, educational AI can have some potential negative impacts. I think there's a lot of promise, a lot of excitement around its potential to support learning. But as you can see, this is not just for generative AI. Some of these headlines are from several years ago. There are some risks as well. Next slide, please. And of course, this is not new research from folks like Sophia Noble, Joy Bwalamwini, Tanit Gabru, and many others have found disparities and biases in algorithms for several years. Next slide. And even going back to 1996 from Batya Friedman, Helen Nissenbaum's seminal work on bias in computer systems and others, this has been there's been a growing awareness of these risks. Next slide. Some folks, some of my colleagues here at Google Research, Renee Shelby and others, have put out a taxonomy of different kinds of algorithmic harms. Next slide. Including the quality of service that users of algorithmic systems experience and differences in that quality of service. In this headline, this is from different exam results for allocation of opportunities and resources from AI. Next slide. But for Gen AI, the harms of representation or how different demographic groups and communities are represented by AI may be more prevalent, as well as some of the systemic risks in society. Next slide, please. There's been some recent research identifying how language models are, quote, aligned with values from the global north. Here's just one paper from folks, the title, The Ghost in the Machine as an American Accent, where researchers posed questions from the World Values Survey to large language models and found that the responses were broadly consistent with responses from English-speaking countries, North America, and the global north more generally. And so this raises questions of what kinds of beliefs, yep, we can go to the next slide, thank you. What kinds of ideologies and ideas are promoted by AI systems. There's some work from some of my teammates led by Rita Kadri and others, looking at how text-to-image models may reproduce cultural imperialism. So one of the figures from their paper shows if you prompt a house of worship, the photos generated are largely Western-looking churches, and they identify in this paper other disparities in the ways that different cultures. And this is not just for image models, but language models have some of these issues as well. Let's see, are you able to advance to the next slide? Thank you so much for the support. Yep. So this is a recent article from Scientific American showing that ChatGPT replicates gender biases in recommendation letters. And I know we have many folks from higher ed joining us, and this is something I myself write recommendation letters for former students and interns, and this is something I know it's can be a time-consuming task, and so. Some are turning to language models to support with this, but as research from almost 10 years ago now on word embeddings showed, gender biases in our society writ large are being replicated and at times amplified by language models. So as a quote from this article showing that for men that the language model was writing recommendation letters for, it was more likely to use words like expert or integrity, whereas for women, it used words more often like a beauty or a delight. And if you could advance, please. This, in addition to amplifying these gender biases, might also potentially degrade the relationships between teachers and students, or faculty and students. And I'll get a little bit more into that, but as just one example, writing a recommendation letter is a personal testimony of your experiences with a student. And so what does it mean if we offload that task to an algorithm? Next slide, please. So more broadly, I'd like all of us to think about and reflect on what types of harms or biases might Gen AI produce when used in education. And in addition, what kinds of pedagogies or what kinds of ideas or beliefs or practices about teaching and learning do generative AI models instantiate? So I have here a quote from Dr. Nicole Turner. This was part of the US Department of Education's Office of Education Technology. They had a report on AI and the future of teaching and learning in May 2023. I hope this link is not broken, but this PDF is the report is a really wonderful resource. They spent about a year holding focus groups with educators to understand some of the opportunities, but also some of the risks around AI in education. And as Dr. Nicole Turner points out, the educational contexts in which AI systems are being deployed bring with them inequalities from society. There's, at this point, over 100 years of research in education on the societal inequities that impact education and educational opportunities, both in K-12 as well as higher education. And of course, AI systems are trained on data that is produced by people, produced from societal contexts, and may then bring with them and reproduce these risks as well. Next slide, please. So in some of my recent work, my collaborators and I have identified some current and some potential risks that AI systems both previous generations of AI systems like supervised learning, machine learning systems, as well as the current generation of generative models, or what is sometimes called foundation models, the risks that they pose to equity in learning. And some of these risks relate to sort of the fairness issues that I mentioned at the beginning, the sort of quality of service, that, for instance, say facial recognition systems that have worse accuracy for people of color, but there are also sort of broader systemic and societal questions and issues that Gen AI poses. Next slide, please. So I encourage you to read some of these papers and many, many others work on this topic for more detail. But I just want to highlight a couple of some of these potential risks here to discuss. So one, there's a risk that language models or generative AI in education may lead to the devaluing of teachers and the teaching profession, either through potential de-skilling of teachers who may rely more on language models and Gen AI, or as is happening in other sectors, large-scale sort of automation and devaluing of teachers' labor. But it may also lead to depersonalizing learning. And here, I don't mean the kind of like personalization that many AI systems are promised to provide, but more about the ways that learning via an algorithm is more impersonal than learning with a teacher. For instance, if a student turns to a chatbot to ask a question, well, then they may not be turning to a teacher or a peer, and they might miss out on those opportunities for social and social emotional development. And I encourage you to read folks like Larry Cuban and Audrey Waters' longer histories of education technology going back about a century to education radio. But the other key risk that I want to flag here is around the homogenization of the output of models. And what I mean by this is that often language models have a tendency to revert to the statistical mean, so to speak. And some of this is due to the way that language models operate by generating the most statistically likely next token. And that may not be the most unique or most interesting or most appropriate. And as my teammates Rita Kadri and others found with image models, this may lead to this inadvertent cultural imperialism, or producing content that reflects sort of the dominant or hegemonic or most common, the majority, both within a country and sort of the global majority as well. Many, many other folks, Jesse Dodge, Emily Bender, Timnit Gebru, have written about how the training data for language models may smuggle in biases. And as just one example, some have proposed training educational AI on forums like Stack Overflow. However, Danae Ford Robinson and others have found that on communities like Stack Overflow, the kind of feedback, the way feedback is provided can often be toxic or hostile to novices or marginalized communities in computer science. And so how might the language models or the tutoring systems trained on such corpora reproduce that? And like here too, that this might privilege particular ways of knowing or particular forms of knowledge, including but not limited to certain language varieties, say standard language varieties, at the expense of dialects or sociolects. Next slide, please. And some recent research from many other folks have suggested the potential impacts. And I am aware I'm a bit maybe negative in this presentation. I think there's a lot of excitement around AI in supporting learning, and so I'm trying to provide a bit of a counterweight to that. I don't want to discount those opportunities, but I think it's important to be realistic and clear-eyed about the risks. So folks have found that Gen AI may lead to reduced learning outcomes when Gen AI is taken away. That it may negatively impact students' metacognitive processes or their ability to reflect on and plan for their own learning, reduce students' agency, critical thinking, and potentially come at the expense of social and collaborative learning rather than focusing on individual learning. Next slide, please. So I want to kind of wrap up here just by sharing a little bit of what might be done about this. I think it's one thing to kind of have these risks in mind. But we have some research showing some of these risks, and the field has proposed some tools. You could advance to the next slide, please. One more, thank you. Yep. So many researchers, myself included, but many other amazing folks have developed responsible AI resources for AI developers to understand some of the risks and document training data. Next slide, please. In my own work, we've developed some of these, like a playbook or what we might think of as a sort of checklist, a questionnaire in development processes to anticipate possible risks and test for them. Next slide. And then some recent work for language models specifically, we developed a tool to help developers, or really anyone who's prototyping a language model-based application, to anticipate some of these harms and risks. Next slide, please. So here's just a snapshot. I think I'm at time here, so I'm not going to go into the details, but we do have an interactive sort of prototype, a demo of it. You can try out at the link here, bit.ly/farsight-tool. We published this at the HCI conference CHI in 2024. Next slide. And I just want to close on a couple of questions here for you and for your work. How might you consider risks when researching, building, or adopting Gen AI? Next slide. What kinds of harms of the ones I mentioned are you most concerned about? Is representation or systemic risks from hallucinations or homogenization? Next. In what ways might AI be supporting the whole learner, including the socio-emotional dimensions of learning? Next. And how, if you have the ability to make this choice, how will you decide whether, when, and how to use Gen AI in your classroom, or use those as teachable moments for your students? And then finally, how might students' use, which may not be in your control, be an opportunity to rethink the goals and methods for assessing learning, shifting more towards learning processes like essay revision, code review, rather than just the products or outcomes. Okay, and I'll end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Amazing. So I forgot to mention, but I did put Michael's bio in the chat, and we have people asking for slides. So we'll talk about, we'll get those, find a way to get those out to people. All right. And we have Aarti Singh now, who is director of the from Carnegie Mellon. She's the director of the AI Institute for Societal Decision Making there. So I'm going to drop in the link to the AI Center as well as to her bio, and let her close us out with the last panelist, and then we're shifting to Q&A. So just a reminder, drop your questions into the Q&A, and we'll get to those. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it was great to hear, those opinions, and, I think they highlighted great things. Maybe I'll end on a little bit more positive note by talking about, some of the work we are doing around that clearly has ethical, but also like great societal impact. But then talk about the challenges that come up and how we might, or at least propose some ways in which we can try to overcome those. So let me get into it. Right away. So of course, we've all experienced, right, firsthand the impact that AI can have on our own decision making, right? So ranging from whether it's recommender systems for products, right, suggesting, things that we should be buying or watching and so on, to route planning, and then some personal, recommendations or assistance helping us with our daily decision making. But the kind of things that I've worked on are also more broader about using AI for accelerating science. So that's another aspect. And I just wanted to make people aware, especially in the education space, because I think but many times we see a lot of like commercial applications, and then I think the scientific and societal aspects get a little bit hidden. So I just wanted to highlight that there's been a lot of work, including like some of ours that's highlighted here, where we are using AI to design experiments and simulations for advancing discovery of materials with desired properties, or even understanding our universe, right? So these are, again, some great applications that are, I think, really catching on now. But maybe the part that I wanted to focus most on is related to the AI Institute. It's the National Science Foundation, one of the AI institutes established focusing on societal decision making. So this is a large collaborative effort. As you can see, there are many universities part of it, including Carnegie Mellon, where I'm from, but others. But I also, in fact, I wanted to point out that we even engage with local schools, high schools, and community colleges. And I'll say a little bit more about that and how they can, they've been participating in this whole effort. But really here, the focus is what kind of social good can we achieve with AI? And in particular, we are looking at public health and disaster management as two use cases. So one set of challenges we are trying to tackle are around interventions. Can we give better messaging, better risk communication, so that we can keep, for example, in the public health space, maternal patients, so basically mothers engaged with health services, even if they are, potentially living in areas where they may not have access to these resources very easily. And similarly, in the disaster space, where we are trying to do risk communication to make people aware of, or encourage them to adhere to the guidelines around evacuation, around taking shelter, and so on, and helping them make informed decisions. Another parallel that cuts across these two applications is resource allocations. So how can we allocate resources, whether they are health resources or they are first aid, food, water, even ambulances and drones, to monitor, say, flooding, but also in the health space to counter a public health crisis. And I wanted to highlight two of these just because I think these are really, in my sense, like very impactful, right? Societally impactful uses of AI. So one, on the maternal health front, we have already shown that you can actually get a 30% improvement in engagement of mothers with the health services if you can do an effective matching between the patients who are highest risk and the corresponding community health workers. Because typically there are not enough community health workers that they can call all patients, or advise them to stay, on top of their appointments and so on. And simply using, so AI is not replacing those health workers. It's simply assigning who should be prioritized and which health workers should call whom to be able to, keep them engaged in the most efficient manner. Similarly, we are also working with, and this is work done with like several NGOs, both pieces. We are working with another couple of NGOs on developing tools, large language model-based tools, but that can keep information available at the fingertips of mothers. As I was saying, like if they may not have access to these health services, maybe they're in rural areas, it takes time to commute to go to the doctor. So how can you, provide them information? Of course, there are a lot of ethical challenges, as you can see here, right? You have to make sure the information is vetted. You always defer to an expert. And so how to enable all of that while still achieving the potential impact? Like this is, many of the NGOs we are working with also in both in the US, in underserved areas, but also outside of US in Africa and India, and can potentially reach millions of people who otherwise would not even have access to any health services. So I think the potential impact is great. The second quick study I wanted to talk about is in disaster resource management. So here we are working with organizations like American Red Cross, but also state emergency management departments like Pennsylvania and Florida State. And what we are helping them do is essentially design training exercises. So currently, for example, American Red Cross uses a literal physical board game that you would play to train their volunteers. And if we can digitize them, we can give them an opportunity to, one, do this more broadly, but also play out many different diverse disaster scenarios, whereas their physical board game is constrained to a single scenario, right? And we can enrich this with information that we collect from interactions with the different state emergency departments. We are actually doing tabletop exercises with them to understand how currently the emergency managers make decisions under time pressure and with conflicting objectives. And then how can AI assist them best when they are most challenged, when they are under stress and under duress? And can we build assistive AI agents that can, do some of those recommendations to them? Okay, so maybe now moving on to a little bit of the negative part, but I'll end it with a positive spin, which is, of course, we've all heard about several socio-ethical factors, and I call them socio-ethical, just going a little bit beyond ethics, right? That can actually not, despite the greatest technical capability, not lead to adoption, right? So of course, let me clarify a little bit what I mean here. So AI technical capability, we can have accuracy, robustness, timeliness of the recommendation, safety, complementarity, in what way can the AI assist the human, right, in the best way that the human may not be able to. But there are several socio-ethical factors that drive down, right, that act as negative. And these can be either at the user level or at the organization level or at the societal level. So at the user level, we can have accountability is a big factor, right? What if the AI makes a wrong recommendation and you follow it, right? Who's responsible? Is there an explanation to go by? actually, I've worked on explainable AI. I do not believe in it because I feel like AI can lie, and it may use a different, explanation for the prediction or recommendation it's making, but actually tell you something else. And there's no way to control that, really. No good way to control that. Similarly, at the organization level, there's the risk, right, that comes with it, the legality, but also operationalizability. How easy is it to insert AI into your pipeline? And at the societal level, we have the privacy and ethics considerations that we have all heard about. So the positive spin I want to bring to this is that one thing we are looking at is that it turns out you can mitigate the effect of many of these factors by using appropriate, what we are calling use patterns, which means the way that the humans interact with the AI or the way AI is incorporated into the pipeline can make a big difference. So for example, do you actually vet your, during the development of the AI, do you get continuous feedback from the stakeholders, right? If we didn't work with the disaster folks on the ground first to understand how they are making decisions and just came up with the tool and presented to them, there's no way they'll trust it, right? So you have to work with them to build the AI that will be most useful. Another aspect is, should the human always accept the AI? Should it accept it if they are not confident? Should they accept it if the AI is confident, right? There are many ways of using or engaging with the AI that can mitigate the effect of social ethical factors. And in fact, we are developing a whole framework around this. I just want to spend just a couple of minutes saying a little bit about that. It's essentially a counterfactual framework, right? Because ultimately, you want to think about, if I use the AI, so DM means a decision maker here. If I use the AI, would the decision actually be different from what the decision maker's decision would be, right? So that's called a counterfactual. And typically, if the AI makes a mistake when the AI is used, it can lead to counterfactual utility that's negative. It can really drive down your value added from using the AI. And many of these mistakes are very glorified, right? What if the AI misses a cancer diagnosis or something? So we can develop a formal framework around this where we can calculate the net utility. That's a result of all the technical advances, but then subtracting out the counterfactual issues. And it, for example, lets you study the effect of different use patterns. If you always accept the AI, you may have great, positive technical utility, but then the counterfactual, right? The human would have done something different and not made a mistake, drives the whole utility down. But then you can analyze another one where you accept it only if the decision maker is not confident. They would have randomly guessed probably, right? And in that case, you see that, so you can analyze different use patterns with this framework and see that sometimes you can actually convert that. Despite the counterfactuals, you can actually get better improvement. So of course, let me just end, and this is my last slide, by saying that the role that engagement with stakeholders, the role that education and outreach can play are a very critical component of ensuring any of this actually succeeds, right? So in addition to the research efforts, we are working on developing this really a workforce that either develops, uses, or at least understands, right, what the AI means. We have efforts starting from the grassroots. So at high school level, we have been running for the past 2 years a research at AISDM workshop for high school educators. If you're interested, I really encourage you to look at our website. We accepted about 50 participants last year as well as this year, covering all over the US, a very geographically diverse set of educators. And moreover, this is participatory. It's led by a local high school I know of, like in our area, that was actually for 5 years have been teaching a course on AI and society. So they were doing this before we even started. And we got them engaged, but then they're working with other educators who can contribute their own pieces. As an example, last year we had, I think about 13 tribal schools join us, and they were able to bring examples from Navajo culture and fake jewelry detection. So we brought in many of their examples also into the module. And every high school educator has this, like, you walk away with modules that are ready to teach, but you also get to contribute. Similarly, at the community college level, we are developing a project-based hands-on curriculum that's been co-designed working with 30+ community colleges across the US, which will provide this hands-on training on AI, but particularly in like public health and disaster management. And at the graduate level, one of the reasons I put this together was I really want to bring AI and social sciences together. So we recently launched a joint PhD degree that's on human and autonomous decision-making, So we are really teaching some cross-cutting courses co-taught by faculty from computer science and from social and decision sciences. For example, one of them is human AI complementarity in decision-making. What does that look like? So there's a very rich pipeline we are building up to be able to do this training, as well as public outreach, where we are having students run podcasts. So again, please check out our website. You'll be able to see those. We are engaging in public dialogues. I think this is also a very important piece at local libraries. So you can actually like engage with the people and they can ask questions that we never think of, right? Like it would be I think they ask the hardest ethical questions in my perspective. And that really gets us thinking about the research we are doing and what approach we should be taking. So I'll end there. I think, yeah, Janice probably already shared the link, but here it is again. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Aarti, for your very insightful presentation, especially around the use cases for AI, just to also bring us to light that there's some positive examples that we're using where AI is being applied. So we have some questions, and please, to the audience, please feel free to ask questions. We have some time. Thank you again, Aarti. Thank you, Michael and Hiro. So I think the first question is to Hiro. It says, thank you for the inspiring talk. I would like to, I think the question is, students would like to use AI since industry has already adopted it. However, the question is they would like to challenge the results, develop their critical and problem-solving skills by double-checking the generated output. It's not an easy task, but we should encourage, I think, students to do so. So when we started to use calculators, we usually try to double-check the result. Of course, this requires that educators must understand a bit about the algorithms behind the Gen AI tools that are being used. So the question to you, Hiro, is what is your opinion about this approach?
Well, I think, I think, it's not just defining what constituted cheating or not cheating part of it too, but, we really need to, think about what does the, the post-secondary curriculum looks like, in particular around the critical thinking that coexisted with AI-related technology. So organization like, not ACE, but there's another organization called AACNU, American Association for Colleges and Universities. They do an excellent work on sort of like teaching and learning front, and sort of thinking about the, how the curriculum and the pedagogy is going to, evolve within the society with AI. So that they probably have good insights to, offer on this, topic around that. And I think, the broadly at the organization level, important part is, so I think to the Aarti's point, like, the technology is not necessarily going to replace workers, or instructors or faculty members. In a sense that, the introduction of this technology should elevate the role to which the faculty members or academic advisors or others will need to play, right? There are parts that tools can be introduced and tools can do it, but that also means that how to use the tool, how to understand the tools need to be taught. So I think the part that the higher education sector and the leaders have to wrestle with, how to make sure that we provide resources, faculty or administrators or advisors are needed to sort of elevate their role in these kind of conversation. It's not just plug and play the tool, but we also need to do professional development for and the capacity building exercise for existing teaching workforce and the university setup. And how to do that, how to allocate a resource to do that, how to carve out the time for people who are already up to capacity right now in their demand for teaching and others. And I think those are the kind of part that we need to be thinking sort of like beyond developing and implemented technology, but creating the environment that technology can actually thrive where the people also thriving.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hiro, for your response. I think there are several questions, Michael, that are addressed to you around students asking what can be done so that students think fast and then use Gen AI to supplement on what they know. I think there's also a question around assessment. I know you hinted a bit on your last slide around how to assess students. So how can educators change the assessment? Can you maybe speak more about that? What are the things that educators should focus on as they do assessment, but also on the other hand, for the students that Gen AI is there, what can we do to spur them to think better without telling them you can't use their tools because they are there anyway. Industry is using them and academia should also use them. So it's a two-part question to you, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is a fabulous question. I think for me, so definitely +1 to everything, Hiro, that you were saying. I could not agree more. I think professional development for educators, capacity building, sort of, AI literacy support, both for educators, the broader public, is really, really important. Aarti, I really appreciated the resources that you shared and all of those initiatives. I think I would also add to that this question of what tasks are language models appropriate for? And this question of like fit for task, right? And given all of the mounting evidence of the hallucinations or the way that language models fabricate text or facts, and whether that's fabricating citations, whether that's giving really confident but wrong responses, suggests to me that one perhaps pedagogically appropriate use for it may not be as an answering resource, right? Of you ask it a question and get a sort of factual answer, which I think is often a use case that is proposed for language models, but instead thinking about how it could be used as a question posing tool. So I'm a former public school teacher. I have a degree in education, and I'm a big fan of the sort of Socratic dialogue and Socratic method, this sort of question posing method. Paulo Freire writes about this as well, and the ways that asking questions to learners can really unlock their thinking. And so I think for me, there's a lot of opportunity to reframe the use of language models, not as question answering devices, but as question posing tools. And there, it's the hallucination may be less of a risk, right? If it's posing questions to the students, that teachers can facilitate, the responses and guide the students following that probing. But curious what others think here as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael.
Yeah.
Yes, Aarti, please go ahead. I was just going to pass it on to you for your thoughts
Just
on
very
that.
quick,
Yes.
I just want to say I couldn't agree more, because we have to actually realize that yes, using LLMs in that way is really a game changer. If you use it for hypothesis generation, that's another example, so that it can generate candidate hypotheses, like here are different messaging you can send without actually telling you like which one to send. It just gives you a more diverse perspective. You're still the one making the decision of which of those to deploy or not, but it enriches your I think the options.
Yeah. Thanks, Aarti. We have a question for you, Aarti. Have you seen any useful use cases of education in trying to navigate the social and ethical considerations that you had? I think you had a slide that had many of them. So have you seen any use cases in education that can try to answer one or two of the aspects that you raised? Yeah.
Right. So I think in education, we have seen a lot of examples, again, coming from different communities that were involved with, especially the high school educators, where we saw that they were able to bring, for example, even the fake Navajo jewelry detection, like we could never have thought about that project, and it's coming from their perspective, right? So even though it's not education, I guess I'm trying to say that like the more you reach out to people, the more you're able to get at these use cases that that can really make a difference. And I think education actually plays a big role in that, whether it's where right, like the high school engagement or where public outreach in getting those diverse perspectives.
Yeah, thanks, Aarti. I think this is a general question for everyone. Everyone is worried about AI, that it will replace their jobs. And coming in from industry, Michael, but also from education, Hiro, what advice can you give, or what advice would you give to students to reassure them that their education is still relevant, that industry still needs them, even in this whole age of AI? I think that's a good question to get a response on. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I can start off and then pass to others, but I think there is a real need to think about language models and AI in general as a tool to support thinking, a tool to support decision making, but not to replace it. And Aarti, I appreciate all of your work and presentation around the role of AI as decision support tools. I also want to highlight here too that this is not new, right? So when I started my PhD in computer science 10 years ago, that the first project I did was around AI chatbot tutors, right? And so that was like a previous wave of excitement for AI and its role in education, but that also is not new. Folks like Cheyenne Durruti and others have written histories of AI in education going back 70 years and the ways that these two fields have been intertwined. So I think it's important just to get a little bit of like perspective, right? Of there's so much excitement, things feel so new, but also at the same time, the field of computer science has grappled with these questions for years. Education has grappled with other questions around technology, as folks mentioned, around calculators. And so I think in these kinds of moments of extreme change and crisis, it's really important to return to our values, return to our core elements of good education, good pedagogy, critical thinking, literacy skills, and frankly, I'll add the humanities as well. And I have a PhD in computer science, but I think having the broader interdisciplinary education can help give us a nice critical perspective and maybe puncture some of the hype that we're seeing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more on that one. I think this is with, the technology continue to evolve, like it never stopped and we are continuously adapting. So, that really like underscores the importance on college education as like a liberal education side of it, critical thinking, problem solving kind of parts. I think that just become even more important to go. But I think one more part I would add is that, not just, you as a students that, that continue to emphasis on education, but I think the employer side of it too need to be thinking about that part, right? Like if employers see tool as the substitute for people, then we're kind of in trouble around it. But I think employers need to be thinking more than just, today's bottom line or tomorrow's bottom line part of it, and thinking this as an opportunity to elevate the work and figuring out the places where that, well, now we can have place where that could use people's talents and the resources in a far better way than some other task that they, now we could ask the technology to do it. We've done that, but I think that's the part where the employers and the workforce itself need to take a responsibility in leading us to the good direction.
I will say too, I see software engineers all the time using generative AI. And yet there is so much more to software engineering than just generating code reviews, planning the work. All of these things go beyond just writing code. Sorry, Aarti.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah, I was just want to end with like at least an example, going back to the high school educators I was talking about. So one of them is there are two educators actually that came together, one from a computer science department, another was the head of the history department, right? And of course, the computer science department, high school teacher had been teaching machine learning, AI in some form for a long time. But I think their course really kicked off when the history teacher stepped in and was able to bring the societal perspective. And I think what students learn from that combination, right, which could not have been possible, right, if you just think about, well, what was the role of the educator in this case? They enrich the course. They are actually now teaching students the skills to assess when to, use AI, when not to use it, like what are the things they should watch out for, what not. And these were not, anybody can go now, there are so many courses available on AI, learn about AI, but not these aspects, which I think was really enriched by this interaction. So I think the role you all, or in general, like I think educators play from different disciplines coming together cannot be undermined.
Wow, thank you so much. So I think we could go off for another hour into, coffee table chats after the fireside chat. But I think this is a sign of a great webinar when you leave with more questions than answers. And I think it really summarizes, bring everything back to our humanity, and that all of us are better than any of us. I think we're such great notes to end on. I think we told a really great story this session, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. It will be June 4th. We are sticking with a Wednesday, but we are moving the time to 12 noon. So mark your calendars so that we can capture our folks from New Zealand and Australasia as well. I couldn't thank the panelists enough. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Hiro. Thank you, Aarti. Thank you for my co-chair, Joyce, and Jan, who's behind the scenes and making everything happen on the ACM side. And thank you for the Education Advisory Committee for all your support as well. All right, thank you again, and have a great Wednesday.